USSR, no less than those of their client states, were beginning to envy the defeated Germans and Austrians. Hitler had boasted that the empire he created would last 1,000 years. The one Stalin had forged collapsed before the millennium. The only enduring legacy of both men is our memory of the mountains of corpses they left behind. Given the extent to which Hitler persuaded or tempted the citizens of Austria and Germany, two of the world's most culturally and intellectually advanced nations, into carrying out his nefarious schemes, his infamy and theirs naturally preoccupies us. We sometimes forget that Hitler's chief adversary for the greater part of the Second World War was in no way less wicked. When the historical record is examined fairly, the difference between the depravity of the two men is difficult to discern. Most of the perceived differences are a function of Stalin's one unquestionable triumph, the image of himself and of the state he largely created. In the decades since his death, the world has slowly come to an understanding of his remarkable success in that endeavor, together with an awareness of his innumerable crimes. There are still die-hard apologists to be found for the man and his system, and not only in Russia, but by and large they are in pretty much the same global circus as Holocaust deniers. The sorry history of Stalin's propagandistic triumphs and its slow unraveling also lies outside the scope of this book. However, such an understanding is necessary in order to comprehend the reality of the war between the two evil empires. Stalin's great trick was to convince the world that the Red Army had beaten Hitler outright. At that task he succeeded brilliantly. That the state he presided over was, in the words of one economic historian, a victorious loser, is realized either imperfectly or not at all. One frequently has the impression that the collapse of the Soviet state and its main satellites is seen as a natural event, like a tsunami or an earthquake. There is a vague realization of general causes and effects, but a rather imperfect understanding of the particulars. One very particular cause of the collapse of the Soviet Union was the Second World War. Looking at the wreckage of Berlin in May 1945, comparing it with Moscow, it was easy to believe that Stalin was victorious. 60 years later, the architecture tells a different story. Both dictators sought out a war that ended in their mutual destruction. Germany's was apparent in May 1945. The Soviet Union's implosion came 4.5 decades later. That the war destroyed both empires is still poorly understood, masked by the remarkable abilities of Stalin to fool the world into believing that his fantasies were real. He not only built castles in the air, he persuaded people to live in them. Hitler came very close to winning that war, and on the Eastern Front his soldiers came within an ace of winning outright. In the long retreat back to Berlin and Vienna, they exacted a terrible price on their adversaries. If the astonishing advance of the German army into Ukraine and the Caucasus was, as many of them realized, a death ride, the same must be said about the bloody advance of their opponent. The outcome of the war between the two dictators was a battle to the death for both. The aim of this book is to provide the educated general reader with a succinct account of this important conflict, one that places the war within the broader context of the rise and fall of the Soviet Union. There are excellent scholarly accounts of almost every aspect of this war, but in addition to being lengthy and technically complex narratives, they lack this broader perspective. The result was described by the classical historian Polybius over 2,000 years ago. It has always seemed to me that those who believe they can obtain a just and well-proportioned view of history as a whole by reading separate and specialized reports of events are behaving like a man who, when he has examined the dissected parts of a body which was once alive and beautiful, imagines that he has beheld the living animal in all its grace and movement. The scope of the war and the legends that have surrounded it, when coupled with the unfamiliarity of most readers with the history and geography of Central Europe, place a burden on even the most avid reader. But Stalin's war with Hitler presents us with an additional difficulty, one perhaps not contemplated by Polybius: the extent to which one side's account of itself is an elaborate and complex set of falsehoods. Indeed, the rise and fall of the USSR is a complex and difficult subject itself, justly deserving of a name: Sovietology. From the very first, the Bolsheviks exerted a polarizing effect on Russians and foreigners alike, producing